أوكي، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. So let me know how the internet is. I'm just trying two different internets, okay? So just let me know. عن عياض بن حمار أي ابن أبي حمار بن ناجية ابن عقال التميمي رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من وجد لقطة. Actually, just before I start, I wanted to ask, um, from 1 to 10, how somebody complained to me the other day. They said they found that the Arabic was sometimes difficult, and so from 1 to 10, how much of the Arabic do you understand? Okay, safe, Muhammad. Okay, to 9, safe, Muhammad. Okay, so I'm going to slow things down a little bit then, I think, because somebody else was complaining as well. And I was, you know, خير. So let's slow things down a little bit. Okay. So قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من وجد لقطة, whoever finds a lost and found item, فليشهد ذوي عدل, then let him make two people witness. وليحفظ إعصافها ووكاءها, and he should literally keep its container and its rope, meaning note, remember, take note of what is it, what's the container, what kind of container it was in, and how it was tied together. ثم لا يكتمها ولا يغيب بها. Right? He should not hide it and he should not hide it. Same kind of things. بأن يترك تعريفها وهو تأكيد لما قبله. In as much as he should then not announce it. The ta'rif was to announce it. فإن جاء ربها, إن جاء مالكها, if the owner should come, فهو أحق بها, then it's the owner's, right? وإلا فهي مال الله يؤتيه من يشاء, right? Otherwise, it is the money of Allah that He gives to whomever He wills. Meaning, you don't actually own it, but you can benefit from it, and should the person ever come up, you have to pay them the value. Excuse me. Okay. So here it mentions فَلْيُشْهِدْ ذَوَيْ عَدْلٍ. He should or he must have two people bear witness. That's a recommendation, right? It's not an obligation. Okay, it says وَالْحَدِيثُ رواه أبو داود وغيره وصححه ابن خزيمة وغيره وفيه سن إشهاد عدلين على الالتقاط وهو أمر إرشاد. And he says in it it is a recommendation of having two upright people bear witness that you have picked up this item. And he says this is an Amr Irshad. Amr Irshad by default does not, but that means it is a practical, worldly piece of advice. It is not an actual religious piece of advice. Okay. So what does that mean? It means that so the example they give is وَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا, and do the mukataba contract with them, meaning allow them to buy their freedom, their slaves, allow them to buy their freedom, if you see that if it's useful for you, right? If you see that it's useful for you. So that is a not an obligation, nor is it even sunnah, but it is a worldly recommendation. When you say irshad, that's what it by default it means. Okay. Does it actually mean here? Maybe not. Maybe it just makes it actually sunnah itself. Um, okay, makes sense, inshallah. Muhammad, Sabir, Saif, Muhammad, Ammar, Afrah. Okay. So it says Bab al-Fara'id. We are now on to inheritance. Okay, now on to inheritance. So what's a fariḍa? Fariḍa means a fixed share, right? So this is people who inherit a fixed people who so inheritance you get fixed shares, and so everybody could either inherit a fixed share, or meaning he gets this portion of that portion, or you're going to get the rest. So there is these people who get the rest. The people who get the rest, they're in a pecking order. You go one, there's a certain pecking order that we go in. Okay, so that's how we inherit. You're either not on the list to begin with, or you're on the list to get a fixed share, or you're on the list to get the rest in a fixed pecking order. So this is الفرائض بمعنى مفروضة أي مقدرة, a fixed amount لما فيها من السهام المقدرة فغلبت على غيرها, right? Fixed shares, right? So we're not talking about obligation. فرائض, it doesn't mean obligations, it means fixed shares. والفرض لغة التقدير, وشرعا هنا نصيب مقدر شرعا للوارث. So he says, what does it mean شرعا? He says, it is a particular portion that it is fixed and defined by the Sharia للوارث, for the inheritor. والأصل في الباب قبل الإجماع آية المواريث والأخبار كالأخبار الآتية. So generally speaking, we find more information in the hadith than we find in the Quran, right? Because the hadith is more detailed usually. That's not really the case with inheritance. So inheritance is one of these things that's kind of spelt out in the Quran pretty clearly. So you need one or two hadiths to explain this thing or that, but it's not, and then there's more things here and there. But inheritance is one of these things which is quite a good place to kind of a good place to start with some people. You're in a masjid, and your job in the masjid is more da'wah than ta'lim. When you're doing ta'lim, that's something else. But you're doing da'wah. So in a masjid, one of these cool things with inheritance is, number one, it's basically all agreed upon. So, we're talking about basic masail, it's all agreed upon. So it's not an issue of Salafi. I don't even a Shia. What if they have any other kind of things? I doubt very much. So it's one of these things across the madhahib, but basically, uh, it's kind of agreed upon. It's also pretty clear in the Quran. So you can just hear the verses of inheritance, one, two, three, put it all together, and then it's kind of mathematics. It's interesting. You can get people involved on a certain level, and they can start to see the value of fiqh and the value they don't know things. And it also challenges certain things, because obviously you're trying to start slowly correcting certain ideas. So in it, for example, in inheritance, there is this innate concept of um, patriarchy. So males inherit more than females, and males by default are on the pecking order of getting what's rest. You have the asaba, the tribe. So you do start challenging certain things, but in a very kind of clear way, as opposed to, I don't know, something else. I'm about to be attacked by two chickens. What is going on? Okay. وعن ابن عباس so anyway, an interesting point, there was this quote from one of the Salaf. I can't remember, one of the students of Ibn Abbas, I believe. So sorry, somebody went, I believe, to one of the students of Ibn Abbas, if I remember correctly, and he says, teach me. and he said, he said, I went to so and so, وكنت أريد هذا الشأن. I wanted this matter, right? I'm not quite sure what he meant by this matter. Anyway, he says, have you studied the Quran? And he said, no. He said, go and study the Quran and then come back. So he said, I went and studied the Quran and I came back. And then I came back and he said, have you studied inheritance? And I said, no. He said, go and study inheritance and come back. Okay. So then after that, he came back and he said, okay, now we can go. Right. Now, again, I don't know exactly what he was referring to, what the whole point was, but I got the sense that it's referring to furu'. So you can imagine like things we do in fiqh and things, all these kind of like extra details. There's lots and lots of things. And it would be nice to just kind of like go through the Quran in a general sense and just be familiar with the Quran in a general sense first, right? And then thereafter focus on things that are common ground, like for example, inheritance, and then go into furu' مختلفيها, Um, if hadith is a C and fiqh is a C. Fiqh is a bit more of an, can sometimes just be a lake. You can kind of control it a little bit more, but hadith is kind of this like unlimited sea of things. So anyway, I don't know exactly what his message was, but he did seem to emphasize inheritance, and inheritance is quite a cool thing to do. If you could imagine that you don't study that much in the deen, but you know how to pray and you know inheritance is quite useful because you're useful to a lot of people, right? Abdullah Sayyidina Umar, he said, if you want to play games, then go and shoot stuff. And if you want to talk about inheritance, you know, just have a chat. Like, let's do this game, okay? Let's say this person in your family passes away. What's the inheritance going to be? Da, 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 da. Right? Let's say I die. How's going to inherit it? Da, da, da. Let's say you die. Da, 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 etc. Right? There's benefit in it, right? It's benefit in being familiar with the inheritance. Okay. خير. So then he says, عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ألحقوا الفرائض أي المقدرة بأهلها فما بقي فهو لأولى أي لأقرب رجل ذكر رواه الشيخان. Right? So basically give everybody their fixed shares, as in the Quran, and then give everything else. فما بقي, what's remaining, فلأولى, the person of wala, the closest the closest uh, uh, male man, right? That's just for تأكيد, right? وفيه البداءة بأهل الفرائض المقدرة قبل العصبة. It tells us that what we do, we give our fixed shares to the fixed people, and then we give the rest to the rest. They're called the asaba, to the tribe, right? We've spoken about this before, right? The concept of the tribe, right? There is a tribe, which is your asaba. This tribe, they are the males of your family, and they are relevant in marriage, they're relevant in blood money, and they are relevant in inheritance, and they are relevant where else? I can't remember else. But basically, in patriarchy, what is Allah telling us? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, in your dunya, your political and worldly strength is going to come from your what's it called? From your patriarchic system, and so strengthen that system, right? That's how it is, right? So Allah is telling us how the world works, right? So what will happen in certain times, we've spoken about this before, is that, for example, let's say in the West specifically, but in other places as well, is that as you shift, and even in SubhanAllah, if you just look at it on a anthropological slash historical level, look at the names of people. Like look at Arab names or even other names. You will find, for example, for Arabs, they used to be Beni so and so. They used to be from this tribe or from that tribe. That's how it used to be, right? And then it became so and so al-Basri, so and so al-Kufi. So what happened is the tribe dissolves and then the city takes over, right? So um, so that means it's no longer a priority, and that's not good because when the city takes over, then the state takes over, and it's not a good situation. So legally and culturally, we're supposed to have this network, which is this is your clan, this is your tribe, this is your qabila, and these are your asaba. These are gonna this is your team, and they're gonna protect you, and they are going to inherit from you. You're gonna inherit from them, and they're gonna protect the women, and so marriage will be okayed by them. People who want to get married to a woman in this clan, they'll go to those people. Those people will okay it. Um, and there's this protection, right? Uh, in custody, it's not quite like that. Custody is slightly different. Custody is actually matriarchal. So um, yes, it's patriarchic in the sense that one second. One second. Excuse me. Uh, so we're saying with custody, it's slightly different. So it's patriarchic in the sense that a woman loses her custody upon marriage, but it's matriarchic in that sense that it's actually going to go through her family. So that she passes away or something like that, or she's ineligible, it's going to go through her family, like etc. So it's slightly different in that way. But otherwise, this concept of patriarchy is there, and we have to, number one, accept it, and number two, kind of work on supporting it. Right? In for certain people, they already live a life like that. That's how things are. Right? That's how their family is. Other people, it's not. Right? Excuse me. Okay. وفيه البداءة بأهل دلاء etc. It says وفائدة وصف الرجل بالذكر بيان أن الرجل هنا مقابل للمرأة لا الصبي تنبيها على سبب استحقاقه وهي الذكورة. Right? So when it says a male man, what's the point? I.e. the fact that he's male. Right? It is not the point. It's not the point that he's reached puberty. وهي الذكورة التي هي سبب العصوبة. والترجيح في الإرث ولهذا جعل للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين. Right? وحكمته أن على الرجال مؤنا كثيرة. مؤن plural of مؤنة. They have many financial obligations. كقيام بالعيال والضيفان ومواساة السائلين. Right? Men have to look after other people, etc. This is a really important thing um, that we don't understand. Like when people talk about like gender or this kind of stuff, it's all great and everything, but live life a little bit and you see that men are not women and women are not men. And you know, uh, uh, if you speak to women, one of the frustrations they have is that and the reasons for feminism, it is not because they don't want men to control things. It's that because men aren't doing their job. That's their problem, right? Their issue is that with men is they aren't doing their job. They're doing their job, so that's why they're rebelling, right? That's why they're kind of they don't like it. but it's so, you know, as opposed to for a woman not having certain obligations, a huge luxury, right? And it's really, really difficult when women have to do all these different things that they have to do, plus, right? It's just nice for a woman to like, are we going to pay the rent or not? I don't know. That's not, I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to pay the rent or not. Has the rent been paid or will it be paid? I don't know. Sorry, I don't have to worry about these things. It's a huge luxury, right? Um, so, the Western media continues to continually force this idea of that women have to be assertive, women have to be, women always have to be keep getting roles that men have. She has to be the hero. She has to do this. We're still doing this thing. We've been doing this for a long time, but it's overall it doesn't work out like that. It doesn't work out like that. And the problem is men. Men need to step up and do their thing, and then women will be very, very happy to like, yeah, go ahead, do your thing. You know, may Allah forgive us all. And that starts very young, right? That's again one of these reasons why, promoting. I personally, again, in my limited experience, promote men getting youths getting married young. It's like, yeah, you know, everybody in this family, the boys get married at 14. So that means like, oh my God, I'm going to do this, 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 or this, right? So yes, it can kind of be a bit of a game in that they're being supported on a certain level, on many levels. But the whole idea that I'm just a kid, I'm just a kid, it's really, really harmful to society, and it's harmful to men, but it's more harmful to women because women are there from the age of 10 looking at the males around them saying, where's my man? And he's not there. It's actually very cruel. So boys not growing up is actually very cruel for females. It's a very cruel thing. Again, she's not like trying to control. It's like, where's my hero? Where's my person who's going to go to school, study hard, get a job, put food on the table, solve problems, right? That's the haqq that the woman has, right? And that women in general have, right? And it's a problem. It's not even necessarily even achieving it, right? It's not necessarily even just achieving it. Um, um, is my internet okay? Oh, okay, no worries. Um, so so it's the haqq of society, and particularly the women of society and the children of society, that boys grow up and they grow up quickly, right? That's a very important thing. Um, وعن أبي محمد أسامة مولى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ابن مولاه زيد بن وهو ابن الحارثة ابن شرحبيل ابن كعب بن عبد العزى بن الهاشمي رضي الله عنه قال قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يرث المسلم الكافر ولا الكافر المسلم رواه الشيخان. Right. So this is a key important hadith that's, I guess, not there in the Quran, is that you don't inherit from non-Muslim relatives. وفيه أن اختلاف الدين بالإسلام والكفر مانع من الإرث وقد بينت موانعه في شرحي في شرحي الفصول في شرح الفصول وغيرها. I'm not sure what he's referring to. Is there a book called Al-Fusul? I don't know. There's a book called Al-Fusul. Maybe there's a book on inheritance called Fusul. I don't know. Um, there's like 50 million books. It's called that's the name of it. الفصول.
Shaykhna, in a footnote it says
Oh,
الشرحين. الأول سماه غاية الوصول إلى علم الفصول، and الثاني منهج الوصول إلى تحليل الفصول.
this is what you have in your footnotes?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. Can you see if the books are available and put them on the group? And so it's interesting that why would he have a Ibn have a look. منظومة ابن هائم في الفرائض. So I see it on شاملة. في كتاب شرح الفصول المهمة في موارث الأمة. This is by المارديني. And if you can have a look, Sheikh Amar, inshallah. Okay, so then there's that book there. Mm. Says وعن ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال في بنت وبنت ابن وأخت لغير أم فقضى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم للابنة النصف وللابنة الابن السدس تكملة الثلثين وما بقي فللأخت رواه البخاري. So what's the scenario here? Here's what? في بنت concerning a daughter وبنت ابن, right? And the daughter of a son. So when you say granddaughter, we mean the daughter of a son, not the daughter of a daughter. The daughter of daughter does not inherit. وأخت. So here this لغير أم. Okay. So here الأخت. He says فقضى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم للابنة النصف. So what happened here is we have uh, um, the daughter and the granddaughter. So the question is, how does this work? In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that if there's a daughter, she gets a half. And if there's two or more daughters, she gets uh, two-thirds. So what are we going to do here? Here we have a daughter and a granddaughter. So in Arabic, a granddaughter is called a daughter, and a grandfather is also called a father. So how does this work? How are we gonna do this? Because from one point of view, there's only one daughter, so therefore she should get a half. From another point of view, there's two daughters, so the two of them should get two-thirds. So this is what we do. Is from one point of view, we give the daughter her half. And from the other point of view, we give the two of them two-thirds. So what we do then is we guarantee that the daughter has her half, and then the remainder of the two-thirds, after we take away that half, is given to the granddaughter, which is a sixth, right? Because two-thirds is 4/6, and a half is 3/6. So you've given 3/6 to the daughter, and then the remainder is a 1/6. You give that to the granddaughter. And then what happens is then the sister is now an asaba, she gets the rest. So فيه أن فرض البنت إذا انفردت عمن يساويها النصف. right? Tells us that, as it's mentioned in the Quran, that when there's just a daughter, she doesn't have a brother with her, she doesn't have another brother, then she gets a half. ولبنت الابن إذا اجتمعت معها السدس, right? And she gets a uh, uh, and that when we have the daughter of the son along with her, she's going to get a sixth. ولا يختص ذلك بالواحدة بل الزائد عليها كذلك. So let's say, for example, there was one daughter, and 8 granddaughters. We would still give the sixth to the 8 granddaughters, right? وأشار بقوله تكملة الثلثين إلى أنه لا فرض لبنت الابن مع البنات لاستكمالهن الثلثين. And when he says so as to complete the 2/3, what if there were 2 or more daughters? If there were 2 or more daughters, okay, and there were 2 or more daughters, and the granddaughter. So what do we say? We say 2 or more daughters gets 2/3. So we give them the 2/3. Okay. Well, what about the granddaughters? So yeah, sure. Give them the rest of the 2/3. Well, there isn't anything left. So if there are 2 or more daughters taking the full 2/3, there's nothing left for the granddaughters. So that's what he's saying there. لاستكمالهن الثلثين وبقوله وما بقي فللأخت إلى أن ما تأخذه الأخت مع ذكر تعصيب لا فرض, right? So she's getting تعصيب. تعصيب is getting the rest. It is not a fard. She does not get a fixed portion. وعن everyone's following. Some of you might need to review inheritance. Has anybody not done any inheritance before? It's one of these things that you kind of have to you spend a little bit of time on because it's quite easy, but just you have to kind of memorize some key facts and some key fractions, etc. يا رب. Okay. وعن عبد الله بن um yeah, mostly. So when you get to مسائل الجد والإخوة and other things like that, then it gets more complex. So we, meaning Shafi'is, Malikis, Hanbalis, we do the Rahabiyya. That's the Rahabiyya. That's the famous text that we do. So there's at least very slight differences between the Hanbalis and Shafi'is and Malikis, but that's what we do. Yeah, but they have the Sirajiyya. But the Sirajiyya makes more sense because it what's it called? It mentions the person and then what they get. The Rahbiyya mentions those people who get half are the following. Those people who get a quarter of the following. It's kind of confusing. Okay. وعن عبد الله بن عمرو وهو ابن العاصي, right? So whether or not you write the yeah, it is there. Okay? It is not as, it is al-Asi. So I'm not sure in your manuscript, you guys, you have the yeah there or not, but that is actually his name, right? It's like Abdul Hadi, right? Abdul Hadi. Sometimes you see the Al Hadi. Can everyone hear me now? Okay. So we're talking about the word al-asi, it is al-asi, right? Even if we don't put the yeah there, right? So again, I don't know if in your books they have the yeah there or not, but it is essentially there. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يتوارث أهل ملتين رواه أبو داود. Right? Two people from two different religions do not inherit from one another. وغيره وقال ابن صلاح وله رتبة الحسن وهو محمول على اختلاف الملتين بالإسلام والكفر أو الحرية وغيرها فلا يرث المسلم الكافر ولا المعصوم من الكافر الحربي ولا عكسهما. So a Muslim does not inherit from a kafir, and a kafir does not inherit from a Muslim. And um, a a ma'soom, somebody whose blood is sacred, like a dhimmi, right? This non-Muslim citizen of a Muslim state, this person, their blood is sacred. So they don't inherit from a non-Muslim who is a combatant fighting against Islam, right? So there's Muslim, non-Muslim, can't inherit from each other. And then we have Muslim citizen versus non-Muslim citizen, right? They don't inherit from one another. وأما المعصوم منهم فيرث معصوما آخر منهم فيرث اليهودي النصرانية وعكسه والمعاهد الذمية وعكسه, right? So we have basically three types of non-Muslim whose blood is sacred. We have mu'ahid, you have a treaty. Your country, he has a passport, you have a passport. Our countries are talking to each other. We're on good terms, right? So we're all, their blood is sacred. So that's mu'ahid. Musta'min, he asked to come in the country, right? This Israeli soldier, active Israeli soldier, fell out of his plane crashed. He landed in your back garden with a parachute and he said, please don't kill me. Okay. And then you said, I will not kill you. You are safe. Right. So you as an individual gave him that sanctity safety. He's now safe and nobody else can harm him. Right. And then what? And that's one. And then you have the third one is Dhimmi, right? Christian or Jewish citizen of the Muslim state. Right? These are these three. Right. وعن بريدة excuse me ابن الخصيب I believe right or خصيب if somebody could double check رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم جعل للجدة السدس إذا لم يكن دونها رواه أبو داود وغيره وصحح ابن خزيمة وغيره. It says the grandmother, Rasul said that the grandmother is ja'ala is treated as if she's the mother in that she gets a sixth. If there is no mother there. So basically she stands, like the grandfather will often by default stand in the stead of the father, and the grandmother stands in the stead of the mother, and she gets a sixth. وفيه أن فرض الجدة عفوا السدس إذا لم يكن معها وإلا فهي محجوبة بها she's blocked سواء كانت الجدة من قبل الأم أو من قبل الأب, right? So there is a man dies leaving behind his grandmother from his dad's side and grandmother from his dad's side and his mother. So his mother blocks the grandmother from his dad's side, her mother-in-law. So he dies, his mother inherits, and his dad's grandmother does not inherit. His dad's mother does not inherit. But otherwise, if there is no mother, then the grandmother takes the place of the mother. وعن أبي كريمة المقدام ابن معدي ابن عمرو بن زيد بن معدي كرب، بفتح الكاف كرب، وكسر الراء مع كسر الباء والنون على الإضافة. م? معدي كرب or معدي كربة. So basically, how is it معدي كربة? Because it is you've basically merged these two words together, right? You've merged the two words together. معدي كرب. So or إضافة معدي كرب or معدي كربة. رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنا وارث من لا وارث له، رواه أبو داود وصححه ابن حبان وغيره. وفيه أن الميت إذا لم يخلف وارثا خاصا ورثه المسلمون بأن يوضع في بيت المال ليصرفه الإمام في مصارفه، فإن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يرث شيئا لنفسه، بل يصرفه للمسلمين، ولأنهم يعقلون عن الميت كالعصبة عن القرابة فيرثون منه. Right? So basically, the process of what anybody who dies and you don't have any heirs, then what happens? The state inherits from you, right? Just like if you accidentally killed somebody, and you don't have a tribe, then the state pays the blood money for you. And he says, وفي رواية الخال وارث من لا وارث له، ولقد تكلمت عليهما مع استيفاء الكلام على ذلك في شرح الفصول الكبير. So it presumably has two commentaries there. Um, Now the condition here is انتظام الأمر, or what is it called? عدم فساد النظام, that the political system that exists not be corrupt and crazy, right? So the Shafi'is, so the Hanafis, what they do is they go to Dhawil Arham, is you basically start treating people who are really further, like your second cousin, your third cousin, etc., and start treating them. You start giving inheritance to them because they are, and treating them as if they were closer. Basically, that's what the Hanafis do. The Shafis, we don't do that. We give it to the state. But the Shafi'is, in reality, have not been doing that for ages because things are stupid. The rulers have been crazy, right? So there's many, things that we see that that we're often shocked and disturbed. Oh, how the ummah is today and how difficult things are. It's kind of always been like that. The default is the rulers are crazy. Um, they just steal everybody's money, and that's about it. So when you put it in Beit al-Mal, they just don't bother. So Allahu A'lam. So the Shafi'is basically we uh, been have been forced to become Hanafi on this issue. Okay, عن جابر رضي الله عنه قال قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا استهل المولود أي صاح والمراد علمت حياته not علت والمراد علمت حياته بصياح أو غيره ورث ورواه أبو داود والصحة بن حبان. So here's this issue. The baby in the womb does not inherit. The baby is born alive and then dies. Does the baby inherit? And does the baby inherited from? Yes. So you can imagine, a scenario, may Allah protect us. The woman is alive, she gives birth, okay? And the baby is alive. She dies, okay? And then a few hours later, the baby dies, okay? So now what's going to happen? When she died, her son inherited from her, okay? When he dies, other people inherit from him. Okay, so we don't say, oh, well, that doesn't really count because he was only alive for like 2 hours. No, no. He was alive, so he inherited from his mum, and now other people inherit from him. Does that make sense? Okay. وفيه أن السقط إذا علمت حياته so somebody who was born dead in the sense that he was actually alive ورث is made to inherit كالكبير وعن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الولاء لحمة كلحمة النسب بضم اللام وفتحها في اللفظين بضم اللام so لحمة or لحمة لا يباع ولا يوهب رواه ابن حبان والحاكم وصحح إسناده and Imam Shafi narrates it as well I believe so he says the Prophet ﷺ said al-wala loyalty slave loyalty to the one who set him free is like a piece of flesh is a piece of flesh like unto the flesh of lineage it cannot be sold and it cannot be given to somebody else رواه okay so he says وفيه أن الولاء يورث به ولا يباع ولا يوهب كالنسب وبه يعلم أنه لا ينتقل عن مستحقه كالنسب so it's something that is innate in this person you were set free by this person you now have this family tie and now you will inherit from them or they will inherit from you so here's this man he was freed by this family okay he has no children no wife nobody he dies who inherits from him they do فلو أعتق عبدا على أن لا ولاء له عليه أو على أن له نسب لغى الشرط وثبت الولاء له right so somebody set a slave free and said look I'm setting you slave you're free but there's no wala I'm not in charge of you you're not in charge of me the same slave for example slips up and accidentally kills somebody now his awliya this person has this wala has to pay the blood money so no we agreed we're not going to do that so the answer is لغى الشرط right it's like saying for example you get married on the condition that if you have children, you're not obliged to support those children, right? So لغى شرط خلاص نسب doesn't القرابة right that's not something you can that's not something that's subject to your agreement or disagreement وعن أنس رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أفرضكم زيد بن ثابت رواه الترمذي وغيره وصححه وفي ضمن حديث أرحم أمتي في ضمن حديث أرحم أمتي بأمتي أبو بكر وأشدهم في أمر الله عمر وأصدقهم حياء not حبا حياء عثمان وأعلمهم بالحلال والحرام معاذ بن جبل وأفرضهم زيد بن ثابت وأقرأهم أبي بن كعب ولكل أمة أمين وأمين هذه الأمة أبو عبيدة بن جراح right, so it tells us that what about Zayd ibn Thabit so Zayd ibn Thabit and Abdullah Mas'ud they are these kind of famous Sahaba that had key discussions between themselves so Zayd ibn Thabit he's kind of like the head of the Medina school Abdullah Mas'ud he's head of the Kufan school the Kufan school became the Hanafi school so the Hanafis going to have certain key positions here and there that are going to be fundamentally different from the Jumhur based on are we going with Zayd ibn Thabit or are we going with Abdullah Mas'ud right? In reality I believe the Hanbalis in some issues go with Abdullah Mas'ud as well right so the mas'ala jad wa ikhwa how do we deal with when somebody dies leaving a grandfather and brothers who's the closest how does that work out many other issues as well that Zayd ibn Thabit gave fatwa on okay باب الوصايا جمع وصية وهي لغة الإيصال من وصى النبي بكذا وصله به لأن الموصي وصل خير دنياه بخير عقباه is to connect so wasiya so we have basically wasiya which is a bequest and then you have the wasi is the person who is given that bequest and then we have who is the there's another word there There's another, so there's making somebody in charge of your estate or something else. I can't remember the word now. Anyway, so it says شرعا تبرع بحق مضاف لما بعد الموت. When I die, my house is going to go to the orphans. ليس بتدبير ولا تعليق عتق وإن التحق بها حكما كالتبرع المنجز في مرض الموت أو الملحق به والأصل فيها قبل الإجماع قوله تعالى من بعد وصية يوصى بها أو دين وأخبار كأخبار الآية على الأثر الآتية على الأثر. Right? So the idea is that you're giving something away upon death. Okay? Giving something away upon death. So this is separate to inheritance, right? And so this is how you can quote unquote inherit from non-Muslims, or Muslims can inherit from you, is that through a wasiyah, not through irth. Irth is fixed. Wasiyah is up to you. I want a third of my money to go to the the tree shrew society of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, right? So it's just some kind of thing. I want a quarter of my money to go to I want all my Pokemon cards to go to this Pokemon club, right? It's nothing religious necessarily, it could just be giving something, right? Like, it says عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما حق امرئ مسلم له شيء يوصي فيه يبيت ليلتين إلا ووصيته مكتوبا عنده رواه الشيخان. Right? So it says no Muslim man has a right to ever have any kind of wealth that he may be able to give as a bequest. And then I'll translate this. Like he doesn't have a right to have that and then remain 2 nights without actually doing it, right? You have a house, you have this, you have that. You got to go and write it down and say this is going to go to this person, that's going to go to that person, etc., etc., etc. Right? He says فيه طلب الوصية وهي سنة للأخبار, right? And it is not an obligation, right? It's not obligation. It sounds like an obligation, but it's not. So it's anything. Sorry. Yes, because otherwise it can be vetoed. It doesn't have to be. It can be vetoed by your heirs. So it says فيه طلب الوصية وهي سنة للأخبار. Right. So if you said, I want all my money to go to the poor, there's 1/3 will go to the poor, but the rest of it won't. The rest of it they'll ask the heirs, are you happy or not to do that? وفيه طلب الوصية وهي سنة للأخبار وللاحتياج فاعلها للثواب, right? And so it has to be what's it called? Ya Rab. It is something that's always mentioned, something that is recommended and not something that is personally obligatory, even though it sounds like it. Right? وشرط صحتها التكليف والحرية والاختيار. You have to have reached puberty, you have to be free, and you have to do so by choice. ولا فرق فيها بين المسلم والكافر والتقييد بالمسلم في الحديث جري على الغائب لأنه أسرع الامتثال. Whether it's a Muslim or non-Muslim, it doesn't matter. A Muslim and a non-Muslim could be in receipt of something or could also be giving it. It's all the same. عن سعد بن أبي وقاص رضي الله عنه قلت حين جاءني النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعودني يا رسول الله أنا ذو مال, I have lots of money, ولا يرثني أي بالفرض إلا ابنة لي, I only have one daughter who's going to inherit from me. It's منسوخ. Yeah, it's منسوخ. Okay. يا رسول الله أنا ذو مال ولا أنا ذو مال ولا يرثني أي بالفرض إلا ابنة لي. So I just have one daughter. أفأتصدق وفي رواية uh, What do you have, guys? في رواية أوصي, not أنا وصي, right? أفأتصدق or أفأوصي, ما شاء الله. أفأوصي, there we go. Well, they changed the fa into a noon and then it all got messed up from there. أفأوصي بثلثي مالي. قال لا. قلت أفأتصدق بشطره أي نصفه. قال لا. قلت أفأتصدق بثلثه. قال الثلث بالرفع فاعل محذوف يكفيك ثلث. أو خبر مبتدئ محذوف أي المشروع الثلث. وبالنصب بالإغراء الثلث أو بغيره كأعطي ثلثا. والثلث كثير. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying, yes, a third. Or a third is what you can do. Or yeah, do a third. والثلث كثير. Right? That's still a lot. بالمثلثة, not كبير. وروي بالموحدة كبير. And a third is big. Right? قيل فينبغي أن ينقص منه شيئا. It's been said that one should give a little bit less than that. إنك استئناف تعليل. أن بفتح الحمزة على أن مصدرية وبكسرها على أنها شرطية. So indeed أن تذر بالنصب على الأول بالجزم على الثاني أي تترك ورثتك أغنياء خير من أن تذرهم عالة يتكففون الناس. It is better to leave your family with some money. It is better to do that than to leave them poor, عالة, and putting out their hands to other people. Right? So he's saying it's fine. It's not. You don't need to do that. Um, you don't need to give everything away in that sense. It's good to leave them with something. Right? So there's somewhat of an imbalance, though. You honestly see, and I saw that when I've again generally with Eastern Muslims is this idea that like an over responsibility. Like I have to make sure that my family has a house. I have to make sure that if I die today, I remember somebody telling me this, they're like, like why do I have to buy a house? Very religious person, because said if I die today, where will my family go? So obviously that's good from the point of view of being very responsible. But the question is, you're responsible while you're alive, right? The last part I will look after them. Like, it's like trying to pray a prayer that you're not alive to pray. So do you, So I mean, it depends how you look at it, right? If somebody from the point of view of responsibility, maybe, from the point of view of worrying about something that Allah's not even asking you to do, you know, there's no need to do that. How are my kids going to survive if I die today? Well, how are they surviving so far? Allah's providing for them, right? You're not the cause. You are not the cause. Even spawn on the word. You are the word cause and means. All of these things, like if you think about the word in English or Arabic for the word cause or reason, um, like cause is not the actual cause, right? Sabab in Arabic means a road or a rope. It doesn't mean the actual cause, right? Even the word cause in English is like that's a pathway. A cause is a pathway, right? So like it's not why they're eating, it's how they're eating, how Allah makes them eat, not why they eat. So you're not providing for them anyway. You're not providing for your kids anyway, physically or emotionally. Allah's providing for them. You're just doing your ibadah by doing your job. So that ibadah ends when you die, right? So, we can have you look at it in either way. In general, we need to kind of have a balance between not being ridiculously, what's it called? Heroic about things and just leaving people in the middle of nowhere. But at the same time, is that like, Allah's been looking after people. It's okay. يسألونهم مادين أكفهم للأخذ منهم أو على جعل أن مصدرية فمحلها مع تذر مبتدأ وخبره خير، والجملة خير إن، والجملة خبر إن بإنك، وعلى جعلها شرطية فخير، فخير خبر مبتدأ محذوف. Okay. Anyway, just two proper possible translations. I'm not going to go through the whole grammar here. So he says, إنك أن تذر ورثتك أغنياء خير من أن تذرهم عالة يتكففون الناس. Right. One is it's better for you to leave your family with some money than to leave them poor, having to stretch out their hands to people. Or um, إنك إن تذر with a سكون ورثتك فهو خير. Right. The other one is then if you leave your family wealthy, it will be better. والحديث رواه الشيخان وفيه سن الصدقة لذوي الأموال. So in general tells us that it's recommended that if you have money, you should give it sadaqah, right? And again, something that I've stressed before is none of us have the luxury to spend our money as we like. None of us are in a situation. We are not in a situation where there's lots of money and we can kind of choose what to do. Every single thing is basically we have money and we have time and we have to use it for A or B based on fard and based on the hierarchy of obligations and the hierarchy of what is it? Priorities, right? So, we're like, okay, well, so can I buy some soda for my kids or not? So yeah, but only because you need to. And if you don't need to, you can't do that because you don't have this luxury of like, oh, there's tons of money and we can kind of choose what to do this and choose what to do that. There are people starving. There's all these huge problems in the world, all sorts of crazy things happening. And so it's like that's not so, luxury is only taken when as a necessary. Like we need this luxury. If there was no, if this luxury didn't happen, we would have problem X, right? So we also have to look at it from the like, what is the problem that would happen if you didn't do this? Do this. Otherwise, things like, oh, just because I can, that's not how the Muslim thinks in terms of our time and in terms of our money. You don't have that luxury. It's just you got to spend your money and your time on the most important thing, and then the second most important thing, and then the third one, and just go down your hierarchy of priorities, your list of priorities. That's it. Right? And we've mentioned to many of you before as well what Sheikh Ba'shan mentions, or Ba'ashan mentions in Bushra al-Karim in his commentary on Muqaddah al that he said that you know when there are people of Ahl Darurat, when there are people who are in genuine dire straits, people who don't have enough food, people who don't have enough water, people who are in war zones, things are all falling apart, okay? Then it is obligatory on anybody who has a year's savings to spend his excess of a year's savings on them, right? So you can imagine someone like, say, for example, is he here right now? 16 kids, okay? May Allah give him more kids and more money. I mean, so, let's say, for example, you say, safe, here's your house, here's a car. In fact, you don't know how many cars you need. You need a train for 16 kids. You don't need a car, right? How can you even get them in one car? Like, I'm trying to think of any vehicle, your bus, basically. There we go, right? So anyway, so basically when you say here, safe, you have a house. Okay, alhamdulillah. So anyway, you can imagine those that he still has to support. Let's say 12 kids he still has to support, or whatever it is. So here are these kids that he has to support. We're going to say, here's a house, right? So I don't know this 100%, but that's my estimation. That when you say kifayat sana, it means not that you have to sell your house, right? Owning a house, wallahu alam, is considered of these basic needs. So he owns his house, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, quite a big house because he's got 12 kids in it. And then he has his car or cars, whatever he's needed. He has his money to support these people, to send them to school if he has to send them to school, if the food, electricity bills, this, that. You have all these things for a whole year. Okay, car paid off, house paid off. And then he says, what do you have extra? I have 5 cents. Okay, that 5 cents is going to go to darurat, right? So Sheikh Ba'ash, and he says, many people are ignorant of this, even though they consider themselves religious, right? So, you know, luxury is not in our world. We don't have the luxury of dealing with luxury. Luxury dealing with luxury is when it's a need. A luxury for your wife because she needs these things. A luxury for your kids because they need these things. What would happen if your kids didn't have that? You know, what would happen if this would happen, that would happen, right? Again, it's a taqdeer, it's an estimation, right? But that's what you're playing with, saying, Ya Allah, why did you buy your son a cake when these other kids were starving? Say, because my son needs this. If he doesn't have this cake, it's going to be like really, really hard, you know, as opposed to why'd you buy him a second cake, you know? So we have to be very, very careful with our time and very, very careful with them. We do not have the luxury to choose what to do with it. We have to follow the system of priorities, right? From A to B to C, that's it. You cannot go to D before C. You cannot go and do something else. You sleep the time that you need to sleep, exercise time you need to exercise, time with family that you need to take to time with family, time by yourself, whatever is needed, these are these things. We don't just have free time and free money, right? There's no expendable income. Nobody has expendable income while the world is in the situation it's in. I mean, look at the book that we have here, right? Why is it that there's like such a bad book that's printed? Countless mistakes, right? It's just indicative of how things are falling apart. Um, وفيه سن الصدقة لذوي الأموال ومراعاة الوارث في الوصية. Taking into consideration that when you do the bequest, you're like, oh, hang on a minute, I have heirs, right? وتخصيص عفوا وتخصيص عموم الوصية المذكورة في القرآن بالسنة, right? And also tells us that the general idea of bequest in the Quran has been qualified by the hadith, even though the hadith is ahad. So you can give inheritance, but it can't be less more than a third. وهو قول جمهور الأصوليين وهو الصحيح, right? There's other things as well. He's also on his deathbed, right? It doesn't really talk about that. So what would happen here basically? Let's say he just said, no, I want all my money to go to the poor. Okay? So now he dies. And then his daughter would inherit a half, okay? Um, um, and the rest would go to the state. And she could veto um, a bit more, right? Because she anything that's over a third, she could veto it, right? So he's giving all of it away. So she can say, no, I want my half, you know. Or if there was her and her brother, right? So they're going to get everything. He's going to get 2/3, she's going to get a third. And so now the father has said, oh, I want all my money to go to charity. So in which case anything that's over a third of the money, they can start say, no, we don't okay that. And could that be a good thing to do or a bad thing to do again, based on your priorities? So with charity, the same thing. Why don't you give charity? I don't give charity because it's haram for me to give charity. What do you mean it's haram to give charity? Because I have other obligations to give, right? So here's this son who's like, yeah, I know my dad was trying to give charity, but I have responsibilities towards people, right? So these are needs, these are important things. So I'm gonna stop this inheritance because I need the money, right? So many people, for example, they're like, oh, you should be more generous. So yeah, but generous doesn't mean giving it to you. Generous means give all your money to Allah and say, oh, Allah, where do you want me to put this money? Do you want me to put this money in my own healthcare, in my own, for example, things for myself? You know, um, for example, this woman, she's continually freaking out, and she's like, you know why I'm freaking out? It's 'cause I'm super stressed all the time. It's like, why am I stressed all the time? I don't have enough space. So she's like going to buy her own car that the kids never go into, and she's going to ask her husband, please just watch the kids, everybody, Saturday morning from Fajr till Dhuhr, I'm not home. I'm just gonna go and do something, nothing. Go to a cafe and look at a tree, by myself. So that's not luxury if you need it, you know. But the second cup of tea, why did you get the second cup of coffee? Why did you buy the more expensive car when you didn't need it? You know? So we have to be very, very careful with these things. Every single thing, there's a wajib al-waqt. Every single time there's a wajib on us. May Allah forgive us all, right? And every single thing you have, you're going to give it to Allah in this way or that, right? You're going to prioritize, right? And this is one of again, a major problem with women is that they don't prioritize, right? They don't prioritize. Like, what's your priorities? Okay, my fard, my husband, this, that. So at the end of her day, she has all these things. It's like, that's not your priority. So she's investing in things that Allah loves at the cost of things that Allah loves more, right? It's often the case. And men do the similar thing as well. Many people do those things, but particularly women, right? That they're not prioritizing. They're thinking too emotionally, and they feel it would be really, really bad if I didn't do this or if I didn't do that. It's true, it would be bad, but not as bad as what you're missing out on. There's something else that's more important, right? And that's a very important thing to note. وعن أبي أمامة go ahead شيخ عمر.
Sorry, Shaykhna, on the previous hadith, I didn't catch why we take it to be mandub when the zahir is that it's
This one here.
yeah.
Um. Oh, because it's why is it? It's just because there was a naskh of it. Originally there was no, right? Originally there was just wasiyah and no fara'id.
Yeah, okay.
So that was mansukh and then it just became sunnah, like.
Okay. Barakallahu fik.
Right? Okay. وعن أبي أمامة صدي بضم الصاد وفتح المهملة. Where's the مهملة? Oh, صدي وتشديد الياء ابن عجلان الباهلي رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله قد أعطى كل ذي حق حقه فلا وصية لوارث. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has now revealed that every single person who has a inheritance right has certain inheritance rights. فَلَا وَصِيَّةَ لِوَارِثٍ. So therefore, there is no benefit and there's no point, and therefore you cannot do a bequest and for somebody who is already inheriting. Right? The zahir of the hadith is anybody who is an heir cannot inherit. رواه أبو داود وغيره وحسنه الترمذي. وفي رواية البيهقي بإسناد صالح لا وصية لوارث إلا أن يجيز الورثة. Right? There is no inheritance given to an inheritor, to an heir, unless the waratha, unless the heirs accept. So here, notice, we would normally say that a hadith that's only in Bayhaqi just cannot be sahih, just by virtue of the fact of how late it is. But this is slightly different. Um, I mean, arguably slightly different in that the general hadith exists, right? But we may say that this idafa here, إلا أن يجيز الورثة عفوا, this is munkar, right? You might argue that is munkar, right? So you can imagine here's a hadith, and this hadith is also almost لا وصية لوارث is like almost mutawatir. I think it's mutawatir, Allahu a'lam, right? So then suddenly there's one version of it in one particular place where it says unless the other people say okay, wallahu a'lam. Anyway, so we Shafis, we go with this ziyada, and we say that's fine, right? So you just said, look, guys, when I die, we already know how inheritance can be divided, but I want my car to go to my youngest son, right? So that's a bequest. So then as long as everyone else is happy with it, it's fine. Right? Meaning as long as if it as whatever is in excess of a third, then they have to okay it, right? So he says وليس المعنى نفي صحة الوصية للوارث بل نفي لزومها. Not saying that it's not valid, but saying that it's not binding. أي لا وصية لازمة لوارث خاص إلا بإجازة باق باقية الورثة. Does everyone else? Yeah, does everyone else, does everybody? Sorry, my voice is a bit slow today. Is it باقية? You have that? بقية, thank you. So بقية means the rest. باقي means the rest, right? You could say باقية النساء, right? باقية النساء, right? Because it's feminine, but it doesn't, yeah. إلا بإجازة بقية الورثة إن كانوا مطلقي التصرف سواء كان الموصى به زائدا على ثلث أم لا. أما إذا لم يج... أما إذا لم يجيزوا أو كانوا غير مطلقي التصرف فلا تنفذ الوصية. فإن أوصى لغير وارث نفذت في الثلث وتوقف نفوذها في الزائد عليه على إجازة الورثة. Okay, so he says وإن كانوا مطلقي التصرف. So now there's all these adult offspring. Okay, he says I want my car I want my Mustang, my whatever 1972 Mustang to go to what's it called, my youngest son. And they've all mutlaqi tasarrufing. They all reach puberty and they all have rushed. They all now know how to financially deal with themselves. So that's fine. Okay? So now what's going to happen is um so so as long as everyone else is okay with it, it's fine. Now, here's a correction. I made a mistake here. It says زائدا على ثلث أم لا. Whether it's in excess, that car, is that a third of your wealth or not, irrespective. It doesn't matter. Whether it's whether that's 1% of his wealth or a third, more 40% of his wealth, it doesn't matter, right? Irrespective. أما إذا لم يجيزوا, they say no. أو كانوا غير مطلقي تصرف. Some of them are young. Some of them are have their assets frozen. Whatever it is. فلا تنفذ الوصية. Then the وصية does not go through. فإن أوصى لغير وارث نفذت في الثلث. But as opposed to now he says I'm going to give this car, which this car is actually 40% of his whole wealth, of his whole estate. Really important classic car that's really, really expensive. That's 40% of his whole estate. So he said, I'm going to give this to Jake, my next door neighbor. Okay? نفذت في الثلث. They say, oh, if it's in a thuluth, if it's a third of his money, that's fine, but not more than that. وتوقف نفوذها في الزائد عليه على إجازة الورثة. So now he said, for example, I want all my money to go to Jake next door. I want half of my money to go to Jake next door. Anything that's in excess of a third, they say, stop. That excess of a third, if we say yes, it goes, otherwise it doesn't. Right. أو لوارث عام بأن كان وارثه بيت المال فالوصية بالثلث صحيحة لازمة دون ما زاد عليه والعبرة بإرثهم. Okie dokie. Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I'm just um do you mind if we just stop here, inshallah, today? Just have a bit of a shorter class, inshallah. So we want to Bab Nikah. Inshallah. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. We just quickly see how much we have left. So this is page what? Page 509. Okay. Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.